November 1995. Backstage hallway in Portland, Oregon. Paint peeling off walls in long strips, revealing decades of institutional green. The smell of stale beer mixed with cigarette smoke that had seeped into concrete since the 70s. A flickering fluorescent light cast everything in sickly glow. Michael Chen stood frozen 20 feet from the service entrance. His heart hammered against his ribs, his palms sweating despite the November cold leaking through the door behind him. 20 feet away, Bob Dylan leaned against a dented metal door, smoking with the weary patience of someone who'd done this 10,000 times before. Not the Dylan from album covers, just a tired man in worn leather jacket and faded jeans. Gray hair hung limp around weathered face, eyes staring at nothing with distant focus. Michael had waited 20 years for this moment. "Mr. Dylan," Michael's voice cracked, "I've been trying to meet you for 20 years." Dylan took a long drag, the ember glowing orange. He held the smoke before exhaling slowly toward the ceiling. "That's a long time to waste on something that don't matter." The words hit like a physical slap. But before Michael could respond, Dylan did something unexpected. He looked directly at Michael, not through him, and his eyes weren't empty anymore. They were searching, almost hungry, the look of a drowning man who just spotted something that might be salvation. "You got a minute?" Dylan asked quietly, voice dropping to something vulnerable. "I need to ask you something. To understand what happened in that hallway, you need to go back." January 1975. Michael Chen, 18 years old, standing on the Aurora Bridge in Seattle with both hands gripping the cold metal railing. 3 in the morning, the kind of cold that cuts through cheap jackets. His parents had disowned him 3 weeks earlier when they found out he dropped out of pre-med. His girlfriend Sarah had left 2 days after that. His best friend Tommy had died in a car accident that Michael should have been driving. $43 in his wallet. Nowhere to sleep that night. The water below looked dark and final. A homeless man shuffled past pushing a shopping cart filled with aluminum cans. Portable radio duct taped to the handle, playing Tangled Up in Blue. Michael had heard Bob Dylan before. Everyone had, but he'd never really listened. Not like this. Standing on that bridge with wind cutting through his jacket, the words hit him differently. "Early one morning, the sun was shining, / I was laying in bed, / wondering if she'd change at all, / if her hair was still red." The song wasn't offering hope. It wasn't promising everything would be okay. It was just acknowledging that life was complicated and messy and painful, and that was valid. People tell me it's a sin / to know and feel too much within. Something cracked open in Michael's chest. Not in a dramatic way, just a small recognition that maybe he wasn't broken for feeling too much. The homeless man shuffled past, the radio fading. Michael stood there for another 20 minutes, but something fundamental had shifted. At 3:47 a.m., Michael stepped back from the edge. He walked to a payphone on Pike Street, fed it a quarter, called his uncle in Portland. By morning, he was on a Greyhound bus heading south with Blood on the Tracks playing in his head on endless loop. That album became his survival manual. Every song felt like Dylan had looked directly into Michael's broken life and said, "Yeah, I've been there too." One through persisted like a heartbeat. "I need to tell him he saved my life." The search became Michael's obsession. Not unhealthy. At least that's what he told himself. But constant. June 1978, San Francisco. Waited by the stage door for 6 hours. Dylan emerged near midnight, sunglasses on despite the darkness, gone before Michael could shout his name. March 1981. Michael wrote a 12-page letter, poured everything out the bridge, the song, the slow rebuild, mailed it to Dylan management. Weeks became months. No response came. October 1984, Chicago. Tried a fake press pass made at Kinko's. Security guard looked at it for 3 seconds before laughing. "Nice try, buddy. You and 10,000 others." By 1989, sitting across from him at their kitchen table, she said gently, "Michael, maybe the music is enough." But it wasn't. Michael had built a story about what that meeting would be. He'd approached Dylan with quiet dignity, explain how Blood on the Tracks had pulled him back from the edge. Dylan would understand. By 1995, Michael was 38. He managed an independent bookstore in Portland's Pearl District. Good marriage, 7-year-old daughter Emma learning piano, small house with a mortgage. Life made sense, but the need to meet Dylan hadn't faded. When he heard Dylan was playing the Roseland Theater in November, Michael knew this was it. Last real chance. Dylan was 54, touring less. The window was closing. This time Michael did something desperate. Michael's friend Tony worked security at the Roseland. Low level, but he had keys. They met at their usual coffee shop. "This is insane," Tony said. "If I get caught, I'm blacklisted from every venue in the city." "You won't," Tony sighed. "Between 8 and 8:30, chaos. Side entrance on Morrison. I'll prop the door. You're on your own after that." Sarah wasn't happy when Michael told her. "What if he's not what you think? Then at least I'll know." November 14th. Michael arrived at 7:45, wearing his best casual blazer, looked like he belonged. At 8:17, Tony propped the door. Michael slipped inside. Backstage was chaos. Crew with road cases, someone shouting about monitors, catering setup. Air smelled like old carpet and coffee. Michael walked with purpose. Nobody stopped him. He turned a corner. Bob Dylan alone, smoking, looking exhausted. "You got a minute? I need to ask you something." Michael's carefully prepared speech evaporated. Yes, of course," Michael stammered. Dylan gestured toward a dented metal chair. "Sit." Michael sat. The chair wobbled. Dylan remained standing, cigarette burning between his fingers, eyes studying Michael with uncomfortable intensity. "How old are you?" 38. "You married?" "Yes." "Kids?" "A daughter. She's 7. Dylan nodded slowly, like Michael had confirmed something important. "You happy?" The question was so unexpected, Michael almost laughed. Yeah, life's good." "Good." Dylan took another drag. "That's good." A long pause. "You remember being 20, thinking you had it all figured out?" "I guess I thought I knew more than I actually did." Dylan smiled without humor. "Yeah, we all did." He crushed his cigarette. "Here's my question. You're going to think it's stupid, but I'm serious." "Okay." Dylan looked directly at Michael. "Why do you make music?" Michael blinked. "What?" "Why does someone make music?" Dylan repeated, exhausted. "Not for money, not for fame? Why sit down with a guitar and try to turn feelings into 3 minutes of chords when the world's already full of songs?" This wasn't happening. Michael had waited 20 years to thank Dylan, and now Dylan was asking him. Dylan sat on the floor back against the wall. He looked like a man who'd been walking for days. "You ever make something and then forget why you made it?" He stared at his hands. 1975. Blood on the tracks. People said it was my best work in years. I believed them. Felt like I'd tapped into something true. Dylan paused. 20 years later, I'm standing here about to play those songs, and I can't remember why I wrote them. It's like somebody else wrote them. Michael's throat felt tight. "So I'm asking you," Dylan said. "You found a way backstage. That takes believing in something. Tell me, why does music matter? What am I supposed to be doing?" Dylan wasn't asking for philosophy. He was asking for help. Michael took a breath. "Can I tell you a story?" Dylan nodded. January 1975. Aurora Bridge in Seattle. 3 in the morning. I was 18 and going to jump. Dylan's expression shifted. He was listening now. Michael told him everything. The bridge, the cold, the $43, his parents disowning him, his girlfriend leaving, his best friend dying, the homeless man with the shopping cart and the radio. Tangled up in blue, cutting through the wind and the despair. "Your music didn't fix anything," Michael said. "It didn't make my problems go away, but it made me feel less alone. Made me feel like pain was part of being human, not proof I was broken." Dylan was very still. "You asked why music matters," Michael continued. "It kept me alive long enough to find out that life gets better, that pain doesn't last forever, that there are good things worth staying for." The silence was profound. In the distance, someone doing a mic check. "I spent 20 years trying to meet you, not for an autograph, to look you in the eye and say, thank you. Thank you for being honest about how hard life is. Thank you for making me feel seen when I was invisible. Dylan stood slowly, walked to the opposite wall, stared at the floor. When he spoke, his voice was rough. You know the worst part? I wrote that song about a failed relationship. Wasn't trying to save anyone, just complaining. It doesn't matter what you were trying to do, Michael said. It matters what it became. Dylan pulled out another cigarette, didn't light it, just rolled it between his fingers. You want to know why I asked? Because I don't know if I believe in it anymore. Flat. Final. I've been touring 35 years. Same songs, different cities. Somewhere it started feeling like a job. Like I'm making widgets, except the widgets are 3-minute songs about pain. I'm not sure I still feel. He lit the cigarette. Critics say I'm washed up. Radio doesn't play my stuff. Young kids don't know me. And the people who show up, they want 1965 Dylan, 1975 Dylan, not who I am now. Who are you now? Dylan laughed bitterly. That's the question. I used to know, but now I'm 54 and tired and can't remember which masks were real. You said my music made you feel seen, but what when the person who made it can't see himself? This was Bob Dylan, icon, legend, admitting he was lost. I wake up every morning not knowing why I'm doing this, trying to remember what it felt like to mean something. Do you want to quit? I want to remember why I started. Silence, then Michael spoke. Maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it's not why music matters to the world. Maybe it's why it matters to you. Not Bob Dylan, the legend. You, the person. What's the difference? The legend has to live up to expectations, has to be important, relevant, but you, the person, just have to be honest. Dylan was listening. When you wrote Blood on the Tracks, you weren't trying to save teenagers. You were understanding your own pain. Because you were honest about yours, it gave me permission to be honest about mine. Michael leaned forward. You don't owe me relevance. You don't owe me a masterpiece. You don't even owe me a good show. All you owe yourself is honesty. And if being honest means the work isn't good, then it isn't good, but at least it's real. Dylan quiet. Then, you came to tell me I saved your life. Yeah. And instead you're sitting while I complain about my career. Yeah. Wasn't how you pictured this, Michael smiled. Not exactly. Dylan almost smiled. Sorry to disappoint. You didn't. You gave me something better. You gave me the truth. The show that night wasn't Bob Dylan's best. Critics said he seemed distracted, off-key, but something changed during Tangled Up in Blue. Dylan paused between verses, something he never did. He looked at the audience and said something he'd never said before. This song saved someone's life once. I didn't know that when I wrote it, but I know it now. Michael Chen was fourth row center. When Dylan said those words, their eyes met for just a second. Dylan nodded almost imperceptibly. Private acknowledgement between two people who'd shared something in a hallway. Then Dylan finished the song with more emotion than he'd brought to it in years. They never spoke again. Michael didn't try backstage after. The hallway conversation had given him something more valuable than gratitude received. Understanding that artists are human, legends get lost, and sometimes the people we save end up saving us back. 2 years later, in 1997, Dylan released Time Out of Mind. Critics called it a masterpiece, a return to form. The album won 3 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. Those who listened carefully heard something absent from his recent work: honesty, vulnerability, willingness to admit confusion without dressing it up. In interviews, when asked what changed, Dylan gave vague answers. I remembered why I started, he said. Had a conversation with someone who reminded me what matters. Never elaborated, never mentioned Portland. Michael heard those interviews, smiled, never told anyone about that night. Too personal, too sacred. Some moments aren't meant to be public. 20 years later, in 2015, Michael's daughter Emma found his old notebooks while helping him move. In one, dated November 1995, met Bob Dylan tonight, backstage at the Roseland. He asked me for advice. Bob Dylan asked me why music matters. I told him about the bridge, and I think I saved his music. He'd forgotten why he made it. I reminded him it's not about being important or relevant. It's about being honest. When we said goodbye, he said, Thanks, man. I needed to hear that. After 20 years trying to thank him, we ended up thanking each other. Maybe that's what connection really is. Not one person saving another, but two people reminding each other why they're still here. Emma showed it to her father. Michael, now 68, read it and nodded. I'd forgotten I wrote that, he said quietly. But I never forgot the conversation. Bob Dylan is 84 now, still touring, still writing, still searching for truth in three chords and honest words. Plays over 100 shows a year, constantly reworking old songs. Michael Chen, 68, still listens to Blood on the Tracks on hard days. Still hears the voice of a young man making sense of pain. Still remembers Portland when a legend admitted he was lost and a stranger reminded him how to be found. Sometimes the people we meet aren't who we expect them to be, and sometimes that's exactly what we need.